Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Paul, good evening. To confirm, can you hear me? All right. This meeting has started. We are
Good
live
evening.
already.
I can hear you, sir.
Perfect. Perfect. Good. You're welcome. How was your day?
Fine, fine. Thank God.
Oh, okay. So, basically, we're meant to start this meeting by 10 exactly, but due to the country and the power outage, almost made me miss out. But thank God I had other options. All right, so we'll be starting now exact 10:30. All right, it's so unfortunate Debbie is not here yet, but then we'll start nevertheless. The session is going to be recorded. All right, I'll be sharing my screen during the course of this session. All right, so to explain one or two things to us. So basically, what are we going to look at today? We are looking at what I said I was going to explain the principles of graphic design. The principles of graphic design. All right, so I want to know from your own view and from the video I sent earlier. I sent a link to watch a video, a series of video around 30 something videos, which you watched it. So the guy talked about many things, which principles also were also part of it. So I want to know from you, and how many principles can you recollect when you talk about design? What are those principles that guide design? All right, can you recollect any, Paul?
Okay. I think I can recollect the contrast principle and the hierarchy. That's the contrast that talks about two opposite colors. That's okay. And the hierarchy principle.
So what does hierarchy talk about?
Okay. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
okay, that's good. I can hear you. Can hear you. Go on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Paul, I can hear you. Go on. Speak.
Okay, those are the two I can recollect. The contrast and the hierarchy principle.
All right. That's great. That's great. So basically, we'll be looking at least six principles. At least six principles of graphic design. And why am I emphasizing on this principle? I can just that okay, since I've sent resources, videos on principles of graphic design, we can just keep that and then move on. But the truth is, if we really don't understand the principles of graphic design, if we don't understand, because that's the foundation actually, that's the foundation on which graphic design lies, all right? You cannot violate any principle in graphic design and expect to do a good design, all right? So that's why I'm emphasizing on the principles. And I'll explain by the time I share my screen, we'll be seeing some stuffs which will analyze together, and then you will be understanding what exactly each principle means. What exactly each principle means. So the first principle, I'll just give a rundown or the principle I'm going to treat. Take note of them. We would be calling them and we would pick them one by one as we analyze. So the principles I'm going to talk about here, one, we'll talk about the principle of contrasts. We'll talk about the principle of hierarchy. We'll talk about the principle of repetition. We'll talk about the principle of proximity. We'll talk about the principle of balance. We'll talk about the principle of negative spacing. Negative spacing, all right. So this and many more are going to talk about as we progress. Right. I believe you've gotten that down, Paul.
Yes, yes, I'm going for it.
Right. Let's write on. we wouldn't take much time here, but I know we are going to do justice to a whole lot of things, a whole lot of things. So number one, the principle of contrast. Now, when talking about contrast, basically, contrast simply means two opposing, two two opposing stuffs. All right. So let me say, in simple terms, contrast can be likened to word and opposites. Word and the opposite. Word and the opposite. If you have a tall lady, the opposite of a tall lady should be a short lady. If you have a slender guy, the opposite of a slender guy should be a fat guy. All right. So principle of contrast simply means how readable, how visible, how clear elements of design used are. All right. So how your audience are able to read your design, how clear your design is to your audience, how visible it is to your audience. This forms the principles of contrast. In other words, contrast will tell you if you are doing a design and then probably you're using a black or a dark background. Now, the elements you are meant to use on that dark background should be a complement of the dark color you are using. All right. So imagine you using a dark text on a dark background. To you, would it be visible? To you, would it be readable? To you, would it be clear?
No.
No, that's it. All right.
Mm.
So contrast simply means if you are to use a dark background, the ideal thing you are to do, you are to use a bright element on your design to complement the color. For example, now you're working on a design and then use a black background. All right. Contrast will say that you are meant to use a bright element, probably text, probably shape. All right. Either white, either orange, either yellow. All these are bright um element that contrasts well with the background. But something like you're using a black background and then you are using a harsh font, a harsh text on it, it wouldn't be clear. You are using a blue text, a navy blue text for it, it wouldn't be clear. All right. So that is basically what we mean by contrasts. All right. So when I share my screen, I will show us example of how this thing interplays, how it interplays in the design, how it interplays in the design, and the effect it gives to your design. Yeah, we'll take a look at all of this. So the second principle we're going to look at is the principle of hierarchy. Principle of hierarchy. Now, what do we mean by this principle of hierarchy? Principle of hierarchy simply means your audience should not stress themselves trying to get the exact information you are trying to pass across to them. They shouldn't stress themselves trying to get or trying to locate the exact information you want to pass across to them. In other words, principle of hierarchy simply means your most important message. Mark the word, your most important message. In other words, your design, that message you want to communicate, that important message, it might be just a word, it might be a sentence, but the most important message you want to communicate to your audience should be the most visible, should be the largest. Let me put it that way. Yes, it should be the largest, it should be the most visible on your design. In fact, principle of hierarchy simply means you are directing your audience on what and what and what and what and what to know when they come across your design. So if, for example, you have different set of you are trying to communicate a message to your design, and then the first thing they see is the main message you want to pass, and then the next thing they see is the next important message you want to pass across to them. Before all of that message, you're simply using what is called principle of hierarchy, directing your audience on what they should know at a glance when they come in contact with your design. When they come in contact with your design. Okay, I'm going to do this quickly. Let me share my screen. So we'll make this practical, and as I explain, we would see what exactly I mean. We'll see what exactly I mean. Okay. So just to confirm, can you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, okay, fine. That's good. So let me go over my gallery to to show us a pictorial representation of what we're talking about. We've talked about contrast. Now we're talking about hierarchy. So let me show us what exactly I mean. I'll just go to my folder, and then we get to see some stuffs. Sorry, let this load quickly. All right. So this will aid the understanding of what we're talking about. Yes, to aid our understanding. Like I said earlier, the principle of graphics is the foundation, is the bedrock of design. All right. If at all you don't understand anything in graphic, but you understand what exactly the principle of graphic entails, you are 70% better than any graphic designer who is out there probably combining the resources but not knowing how to combine the resources. Just like in a chess game. In a chess game, there's what is called tactics, there's what is called strategy. All right. So the principles of graphic design is the strategy a chess player would have, and then the tactics are the resources. All right. The tactics are all his pieces, all his pieces he used in playing the chess game, in moving his pieces, in developing his pieces, all right, developing his game. All right. So basically, let me share my um, comment. I want to show something real quick. All right. Are you still with me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay, good. Okay. Now take a look at this design. What is the first thing your eyes get to see? What's the first thing your eyes get to see?
The wow typing. W
Exactly,
W.
exactly. Now, the first thing that your eye gets to see is the wow. And then you, the audience, you will now try to reason, okay, what does this wow mean? And then beneath, subconsciously, you see the meaning of the wow. Wonders of worship. Now, that is the main message the designer is trying to pass to you, to I, being the audience. That is the main message, all right? And then you can see that from this design, this is the largest and the most visible element in this design. WOW, wow. And they want to, we are trying to understand, okay, what does this wow mean? And then we now see it, wonders of worship. All right. So you can see the way a designer directs the audience on what to see in the design. That is basically hierarchy. So this centered element used here, wonders of worship, it is the largest, it is the most visible, it is very, very, very clear. Now, relating it with principle of contrast, what do we see? We can see that the background used here has multiple colors. It has multiple colors, but then the font used or the text used contrasts well with the background. Contrasts well with background. Now you can see a combination of green, red, and kind of harsh background. But then the font used or the text used is well contrasting with this background. And this is a combination of silver and white. Silver and white, which makes it pop. which makes it pop. Now imagine this silver and white used for the wow was probably the color was green, or the color was red, or even blue. Would it be clear to you being the audience? Would it be very, very clear to you being the audience? It
No, no.
wouldn't. Exactly. So this is what principles help us to achieve. This is one of it. Let's take a look at something else. Let's take a look at something else. I want to show us exactly this principle. I That's why I choose to have a live session to make this very, 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 very. Now, from all these designs here, they have the same thing in common. They have the same thing in common. Now, take a look at this. Once you see this design, what exactly did your eye get to see? What exactly did your eye get to see?
The positioning element and the various pictures.
Okay, positioning and the various images. Good
Yeah.
and awesome. All right, so the main message here that the designer, that the creative is trying to pass across, is positioning online like a pro. Positioning online like a pro. All right, and that is what hierarchy does. Hierarchy separates or highlights the most important message, the most important element in your design, so that when you as an audience get to see the design, that is the first thing that we get to see. And you can see the principle of contrast playing out here also. The background used was black, but then the font used was what? Gold, 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 orange. Sorry, orange. Orange and combination of gold. That's a gradient. Gold and combination of orange. That is the color used for the text. And you can see the way it is well contrasting. Other colors used was white. So you can see the way the principle of hierarchy was maintained. The principle of contrast was maintained, making it easier for you being an audience to relate to this design. All right. So let's move on to the next principle we'll be considering. We've talked about hierarchy. We've talked about contrast. Before we move on, do you have any question you want to ask on these two principles?
No, they are clear.
No,
So,
you understand it perfectly, right?
yes, sir.
All right, good. So, what is the next principle we are considering? Yeah, talk to me, talk to me. What's the next principle?
Okay, balance. We have balance. Still have
Balance.
repetition.
Okay.
We have
All right. So,
proximity. Yeah.
okay. So let's take them one after the other. Now, talking on the
Okay.
principle of balance. Principle of balance. What does it simply means? Now, let me use this illustration. As just imagine you holding a scale. Imagine you holding a scale, and probably on one hand, on one hand, the weight of the scale is more than the weight of the scale on the other hand. What automatically happens? There's an imbalance. All right. So the hand where the weight is more tends to go down, while the hand where the weight is less tends to come up. So just like um this game they play, is it seesaw? Yeah, something like seesaw. All right, so one is low, the other is high. All right, so you can see that one is lesser, one is greater. One is lesser, one is greater. So balance also applies to this. Taking the same illustration, it also applies as balance. Balance simply means making your design making your design well. The principle explains itself. Make your design balanced. In other words, there should be no part of the design where the elements are more than the other. There should be no part in your design where elements are more than the other. And I'll give us an example quickly. Now, still on this design you see, is there any form of imbalance in this design? Trying to weight on a scale. Imagine this now is imagine you weighing this design now on a scale. Would you feel a form of imbalance anywhere, probably towards the left or towards the right?
No.
No. Now, the principle of balance simply means you appropriating your design element. You appropriating every element you are going to use on the design equally on your design. All right. So, in other words, you shouldn't pack all your design elements to the left side or to the right side of the design, leaving either of the sides empty. All right. That will automatically cause an imbalance. From our eyes, we'll be able to detect where an imbalance is. For example, now imagine positioning online like a pro was shifted to the left. This date, time, and venue was shifted to the left, and then all the pictures here they also shifted to the left, leaving the right empty. Automatically, we would sense a form of imbalance in the design. Would sense a form of imbalance. Now let's take a look at something quickly. All right. Now take a look at this design. You will see that although most of the write-up were were adjusted to the left, and then the pictures is just what is on the right side of this design. But looking at this design is properly balanced. How do I mean? Now, since the elements, the resources used here, the text and everything were aligned, they were aligned towards to the left. Now, if the picture of Zim Simon, if the picture of Fortune Namdi were not to be here, were not to be on the right, this picture would be totally imbalanced. This design would be totally imbalanced. But then putting the picture by the right side makes it balanced. In other words, your eye is not just tilted to one part of the design, your eye covers the whole design. Your eye covers the whole design. All right. In other words, all the elements are not just sidelined to a part of the design, but the elements are divided equally, equally. All right. So you can see that the picture here, the picture by the right, complements the text by the left, which makes this design what balanced. Which make this design balanced. I'm going to show us some other stuff so we can see. When I talk about balance is simply giving equality to your design. Okay, now let's look at this. As simple as this design is, what do we notice? We would see that most of the elements used here were were towards or tends towards the right. All right. So now visually eliminate the image of this guy here. Visually eliminate this orange rectangle that runs down the background. How would you see this design?
It will not be balanced.
To be balanced, what makes it not to be balanced?
Okay, you said if
Can you detect what will make it?
the lemon. Okay, what is if the image is eliminated alongside the lemon tag? Yeah,
Yes,
I think yeah, it will be imbalanced. The remaining elements will be imbalanced.
exactly. So, as a designer, as a creative, one thing we always watch out for whenever we are creating a design is the principle of balance. We always want to make sure that our design must be balanced at all sides. And what we try to do here is not like, okay, we try to equally split um all our elements on both sides. No, your your text and write up can be on one side, and then instead of making the other side empty, you can just, if you want to use a picture or an image, it can now be on the other side, just as it was done here. The bulk, the bulk of the writing, the bulk of the message, the main message that the designer wants to communicate were tilted, were to the right. And then the designer balanced this by putting the rectangle, the lemon rectangle, and the image to the left to make that equality there. So assuming if you visually eliminate the image and the rectangle running down, we'll see that the left side of this design would look very, very empty, and to be like, okay, all the weight is just on the right side. So like the design now is being pulled to the right, being pulled to the right. But because of this image and the rectangle that was there, it makes it balanced. It makes it balanced. So this is basically the principle of balance explained in plain terms. Let's take a look at one other and then we make progress. Let's take a look at one other and then we make progress. Okay, let's take a look at this. Now, email to profit. Email to profit. Just like we saw in the one I just showed us. Now we can see this one now. Email to profit. What does this tell us? The bulk of the text, the bulk of the write-up now tends towards the left. But now this design is balanced because the images now complements the design, and then the images now are tilted towards the right. All right. So once you see this design, the first thing that gets your attention is email to profit, and that follows the principle of hierarchy. Email to profit, that's the first thing that gets your attention before the picture, and then the free entry, and then other details. And then you can see the principle of contrast. You can see the principle of contrast representing itself here also. The background used was a dark background, but then the text and the other elements used were bright colored elements. Were bright colored elements that makes this design very clear, very readable, and very visible. You now understanding the concepts. Are you like I said before, basically design principles are just rules and guidelines that a designer as a creative you are meant to abide by. Just like we have in maths, we have formula for maths. You cannot solve a particular problem in maths, all right, without knowing the formula. No, the formula is simply what will guide you to solving a particular equation, to solving a particular problem. Design principles are what will guide you in creating awesome designs. That's how simple it is. That's how simple it is. All right, so the next principle I'm going to talk about, we're going to practically discuss, is what we call as the principle of alignment. The principle of alignment. We've talked about the principle of contrast, we've talked about the principle of hierarchy, we've talked about the principle of what? Balance. Now, the principle of alignment. What do we mean by the principle of alignment? The principle of alignment is simple. It's simply like the word align means. Align means making your design elements well arranged, well arranged, well arranged. How do I mean? If you want to align your design to the left, it means all elements that should be in the left should be well arranged in the left. Now take a look at this design. You can see how well arranged all the elements used here are. So, like, it has an invisible border which was set here. There's an invisible border which was set that all these elements should not go past. and invisible border that was set here. If you are aligning your design, your elements right, it simply means all your elements should be well structured in an orderly manner. All right, not that email to profit starts from here and then to business owners will now come somewhere to start here. Okay, let's go to our app. Let me illustrate something. Let me illustrate something. This is my Pixel app. Okay, let me quickly illustrate something. To pass down this message. To pass down this message. Okay, now let's take a look at this. Okay, give me a minute. It's loading. It's loading. All right, let's take a look at this. I hope this is very clear. Yeah, is this clear enough?
Yes.
All right. In the subsequent video training I will be sending to you, I will show you how exactly I made this design and how you can replicate. All right. So this is part of the video tutorial I will be sending. See what I mean. I was explaining the principle of alignment, and now alignment, the alignment pattern I use in this design. Okay, let me highlight these texts and then go on to align. Now here, over here, you can see this over here. This is your align. All right. You use this to align your elements. This to align your elements. But now this aligning here, you can see what we have. You can see the leftward alignment. You can see the rightward alignment. You can see the center alignment, the centralized alignments, the centralized alignment. Now, what does this tell us? It simply means that, okay, let me highlight this now. This text, this text was aligned to my left. Now, a leftward alignment was used for this text. If I want to make this a centralized alignment, all you need to do is to what? Click on this centralized icon here, and you can see it has been adjusted. Now, this text now is adjusted, is now centralized. If you want to make it to be aligned right toward, all you need to do is what? Click on this. Now you can see it has been adjusted what? To the right. Has been adjusted to the right. But due to the concept of this design, I aligned all my elements to my left, and that is why this also was aligned to the left. And how do you achieve this when working on a design? You use what is called your grid tool. Your grid tool. Now here is your grid tool. Here is your grid tool. So whenever you are working on a project, whenever you're working on a design and you want to align your elements, all you need to do is come over here to set your grid. Now, grid simply means borders, all right? So tap on it. Once you tap on it, you see some lines that appears on your screen, on your design interface. Now, all these lines, they are called what? Grids. They are called grids. Now, how do you set your grids when working in your design? It's simple. Over here, I hope you can see where my pointer is pointing to.
Yes.
Yes. So over here, you click here, and once you click here, you can now adjust your grid. You can now adjust your grid. So any grid you tap on can be adjusted. Any grid you tap on can be adjusted. So what I did basically was that I set my grid to this point. So you can see that this my grid was set here. all the elements I used to my left, none of them went beyond this grid that was set here. So the grid is just like a border, a margin, just like you have in your notebook. All right, your notebook where you have those red line that runs downwards. All right, you are expected to write probably just your numbering or your lettering at the back of that margin, and then all other notes you want to take should be after the margin. That is the same thing that applies to design. All right, your grids help arrange your elements. It helps you arrange your elements. You can see that from how to down to click on the link below. Everything were well aligned. They were well arranged. All right. So I made sure I ensured that none of these my elements went beyond the grid I set here. Went beyond this grid I set here. All right. So let me show us one more. We have both sideways alignment and um okay, come in. Be showing us something real quick. Something I'm looking for. Okay, so let me use this. I think this explains what I want to do. All right. So now, looking at this design, you would see that I had a varieties of alignments used here. I used both the centralized alignment, I used both the leftward alignment, I used both the rightward alignment. All right. And how was this achieved? You would see that from this design, my leftward alignment was placed at this side. Now you see that from the logo down to the social media handles, from the logo down to the social media handle, no element went beyond this grid that was set here. No element went beyond this grid. Also, coming to your right, coming to your right, you would see that no element went beyond this grid that was set here from the time to the name of the minister. No element went beyond this. All right. So because this design was not really a design I did for a client, it was a practice I saw a design online and then I chose to replicate it. All right. So I was in a rush. All right. So basically, the ideal thing here, if you would see at the top here, none of my elements went beyond the grid set above. In other words, the logo here was not starting. Okay, this I want to make this as practical as I can. Let me move this. Let me move this. This logo now, the shape did not come exactly, was not above the grid. The shape was not the the shape did not go beyond the grid set at the left. It did not go above the grid set at the right. All right, you discover that it was within the confine of the grid that was set to the left and to the top. Same thing that applies here. Now, the only thing I failed to do was I didn't align the downwards grid. All right. So where we have the minister's name, it was meant to align with this downward grid. But that is that. Like I said, it was just a practice that was done and not really for someone. But that does not erase the need for perfection. That does not erase the need for perfection. So let's go back to the templates we have here. I want to show us more practical example of how your design is being aligned. Like I said earlier, you can choose to align your design to the right, choose to align it to the left, choose to align it to the center. These are the three types of alignment pattern we have: leftward alignment, centralized alignment, and then rightward alignment. So whichever one It's whichever depending on the concept you are trying to work with. All right, you now have to choose the exact alignment pattern you want to use. All right, so now let's take a look. You will see that any professional design you see out there, they are all guided by this principle. They are all guided by this principle. Take a look at this design. What do you observe here? You can see the principle of contrast playing out. You can see the principle of hierarchy playing out. You can see the principle of what balance playing out. You can see the principle of what alignment playing out. All right. So these are the principles that we creative we work with. Take a look at this. Why Nigerian copywriters are broke. That is the first thing you get to see, and that is the main message the designer wants to communicate to you. Why Nigerian copywriters are broke. All right. So the principle of hierarchy simply amplifies the main message. It magnifies the main message that needs to be passed across. The first thing the audience should see should be the main message. And here you can see principle of contrast coming into play. A bright background was used, and then a dark elements were used to complement this. Then you can see the way the balance was properly maintained. All right. So the bulk of the text were towards the left, and then this design was balanced with the image appearing on the right. Now you can see here the principle of alignment being applied. Everything now they are on a straight line. A straight line. That's why I said initially there's an invincible border, there's an invisible margin that was set here. All right. So a non-designer would not be able to see what is playing on here. But we designer, we can detect, okay, yes, we can see the margin, although it's invisible, but then we can see the margin that was used for this. All right. So any professional design you see out there, they are all guided by principle. And that's why I want us to understand this principle. Once you've understood this principle, any design you do would be 70% better than someone who designed and violates the principle of graphic design. I've said that times and times and times again during this training. So basically, we've discussed 4 principles. We've discussed principle of hierarchy, principle of contrast, principle of balance, principle of alignment. So the next thing we are going to discuss, all right, is going to be what? The principle of proximity. The principle of what? Proximity. And now, what does the principle of proximity says? The principle of proximity simply brings related elements together. The principle of proximity simply brings related elements together. And one major example I do use to illustrate this point is where we have our dates, time, and venue. Our dates, time, and venue. I'm trying to look for something to show us here. Our date, time, and venue. You will discover that these 3 elements are closely related. These 3 elements are what? They are closely related. You discover that in most designs you see out there, whenever you see your time, you would see your date and your venue beside it or around it. Whenever you see your date, you see your time and your venue beside or around it. And why is this so? All right. Now, these 3 elements are related. They are related, and that's why they need to be together. All right. So I'm looking for where I have it explained here. I have it explained here. So let me just bring out that and show. Okay. So here it is. Here it is. Now, what does this says? Proximity. We use proximity in design for this reason. One, to create connections between visual elements. To create what? Connections between visual elements, to dispel connection between visual elements also. Now, beneath, we see that proximity is the grouping and shaping of objects in a composition. The grouping and shaping of objects in a composition. Now, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this. Now, you can see how closely related these icons are. You can see how closely related these icons are. This is simply the principle of proximity that is being applied here. You can see how closely related these circles are to form a triangle. This is simply the principle of proximity being displayed here. Now you can see how scattered these elements are here. You can see how scattered these elements are here. All right, like it said, it simply shows the connection. It creates that connection, or it dispels the connection. That is why whenever you have your date, time, and venue, they are closely related. Another example that drives home the point of proximity is where you are having your social media handles. Your social media handles. You see that whenever you have your social media handles, if they are more than one social media, they are always closely related. They are always closely related. All right. We'll take a look at this when we go back to our design. All right, take a look at this when we go back to design. Now, I want to draw something from this design. Now, take a look at this design. Can you see the principle of proximity? Like, can you spot out where exactly that principle of proximity was displayed here?
The call tag and the number.
I didn't get you. I didn't get you.
I said the call tag, that's the telephone tag,
Okay,
and the number. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Now, the principle of proximity here, you can see it. Number one, the call to action, the numbers here, they are closely related. The social media handles, you can see the way they are closely related. The Twitter, Instagram, the Facebook, all right. So it's not like, okay, Twitter and Instagram is here, then the Facebook is now somewhere here. It does not create that connection. Now, take a look at what we have here. Take a look at what we have here. You see that the dates and the time, they are they are grouped together. The date and the time, they are grouped together. All right. So we have the dates here, we have the time by the side. All right. So it will be awkward we having the dates here, and this time now comes somewhere here where we have admission free, or come somewhere here. All right. You are simply stressing your audience. In other words, what they're supposed to see at a glance, you are trying to distract you're trying to distract them from getting your message. You're trying to distract them. All right. So since all these elements that are closely related, they should be in the same place in your design. They should be in the same place in your design. This helps your audience in getting your message better and faster. Better and faster. Now let's read what balance has to say here. Balanced composition feels right. It feels stable and aesthetically pleasing. While some of its elements may be focal and attract blah 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 blah. All right. So no one area of the composition draws your eyes so much that you can't see the other areas. That is the main message, and that was what I explained before. There should be no one part of your design that draws your eyes so much that you can't see the other areas. As you can see this part, you'll be able to see this part. Your eyes should be able to detect the balance. All right. So your design should not be tilted to one side, leaving the other side empty. leaving the other side empty. All right. So we've talked about hierarchy, we've talked about contrast, about proximity, we've talked about balance, we've talked about alignment. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is repetition, principle of repetition, and then we move on to principle of simplicity, and then we call it a day for this session. The next session we are going to be live session we're going to be having would be more of practical session where I would I would literally have to design a flyer so we can see and follow at the same time. Get to ask question as to why I do certain things, why I do certain things. Now let's quickly talk about the principle of what repetition. The principle of repetition simply is telling us that the elements you use in your design, the elements you use in your design should be repeated over and over again. Should be repeated over and over again. Now, what do I mean? Remember, elements of design are simply the combination of your text, your shape, your color, your image, your icon, your texture, your pictures. All of these are elements. In other words, repetition means if you are using in a design, if you are using two fonts, if you're using two fonts, if you're using two colors, you should try at intervals to repeat the fonts, to repeat the colors you are using. All right. Now, let me let me explain this. Let me explain this. Okay, where do we have it here? Where do we have it here? Um, I'm looking for. Okay, let's use this design. Now, this design, principle of repetition, you can see the basic color that was used here. Number one, white and black is not a color. They are simply the absence of colors. White is not a color, black is not a color, all right? They are simply the absence of colors, all right? Now, the basic color that we used here was what? Blue. Blue and red is the predominant color here. Blue and red is the predominant color here. This golden color is the color of the picture that was imported. All right, this icon was an imported icon, and this is the color it came with. Then you can see the principle of repetition being displayed here. Right, so blue was used here. These triangles, blue was used as the color of this triangle, and over here, it would have been it would have been how would I say it now? It would have been a kind of a distraction to use another color outside blue where we have this admission fee. Probably we are using red. The red would have distracted this design. All right. So since the predominant color here is basically blue, now if you want to use another shape, the shape also should be blue, and that is what was displayed here. Now we see from the font is there. Basically, basically, what I can see here are just two different types of fonts. Take just leave out this level, leave out this level. Basically, what was used there was two different type of fonts. All right, and that is that of Port and all other fonts are the same. It's just that the variations in sizes, it's what is the difference. The difference is the variation in sizes. So you can see now this the font used there, or the same font used there, or the same font used there, was the same font used there, but they were used in different sizes and in different feeling. All right. So some were boldened, some were plain, some were thinner, some were bolder than the rest. All right. So this is this is this clearly explains what we call the principle of repetition. Let me give us a more or better illustration. A more Let me give us a better illustration. Let me give us a better illustration. Hang on. Let me give us a better illustration. Um, what will I use? Okay. Now let's take a look at this design. Analyzing this design, what do we see? We can see that basically the background color is what? A gradient, all right? A purple gradient orange, a purple gradient rather, a purple gradient, all right? A dark shade of purple and a lighter shade of what? Purple. And then the complementary color that was used here is what? Yellow. The complementary color that was used here is yellow. So on top here, we have what? A yellow rectangle. Beneath, we have what? Repetition of the same yellow rectangle. So over here, we are not having a yellow rectangle, and down here, we are not having a red rectangle. It will look off, all right? So the repetition applied here, the color that was used here was repeated severally. We can see yellow being repeated 4 times. 1, 2, 3, and this 4. All right. Now, the next thing that was repeated here is the use of fonts. Is the use of fonts. Now you can see that the font here, there were basically 2 types of fonts used here. One is a cursive font, the other one is a serif font. One is a cursive font, the other is a serif font. And you can see this 4-week intensive, the font used for this 4-week intensive is the same font used for this advanced, is the same font used for this fee. All right, so you can see repetition in the use of font. Also, for this graphic design, the font used for this graphic design is the same font used for paid, but a different variant. All right, this was a bit bolder, right? The difference here is we have, okay, the name of this font is basically Montserrat. All right, so Montserrat is a typeface. It's Montserrat is let's say the hosting, the umbrella, the mother. Like we have a hen and her chicks. So the hen is the Montserrat can be likened to the hen, while the chicks is the typeface. The chick is the typeface. Now the type, sorry. The typeface is the hen, while the chicks is the font. All right. So Montserrat is the name of the font, is the name of the font family. While the font itself are now the individual fonts. We have Montserrat Italic, Montserrat Bold, Montserrat Semi Bold, Montserrat Large, Montserrat Extra Large, Montserrat Regular, Montserrat Medium. All right. So those are now the different fonts we have under the mother name called Montserrat. So Montserrat itself is not a font. Montserrat is a typeface. But then we now have fonts under Montserrat. Those are the ones I mentioned. All right. So you can see that the fonts used for this video course was the same fonts used for the logo here, same fonts used for the only 10 slots needed, same fonts used for the graphic design, same fonts used for the training, same fonts used for the class, same fonts used for the call to action here where we have chat up for more info, same fonts used for the pricing here, same fonts used for basically you can see it's what we call repetition. So you can see that the fonts used were repeated several times. The color used were repeated several times. The shape used were repeated several times. All right, so you can see repetition of rectangles. You can see repetition of yellow. You can see repetition of what? Fonts. All right, so this basically explains what we mean by the principle of repetition. The principle of repetition. Let me look for something else I can use to explain this. I think just one more and then, okay, let's let me use this. Now take a look at this flyer. Analyzing this flyer, you'll see that basically what was done here is a simple but perfect and excellent design. Simple but perfect and excellent design. Now here you can see the repetition of color, which is what red. You can see the repetition of what fonts. All right. So basically, because I've been into design for a while, I can tell you what exact font was used here. All right. So here we have MTN Vital Sans was used here. We have also Montserrat being used here. All right. So now you can see the font used here is the same font used here, is the same font that was used here, is the same font that was also used here. So you can see this repetition of fonts, all right? It's just that the basic difference, you know, the basic difference is now the sizes they come with, all right? So the sizes they come with is what now differentiates them. But then the element itself, we normally for to create a professional design, to create a professional design, you don't need so much elements on the design. And that leads us to the principle of simplicity. And with this principle, I'll be wrapping up on the principles of graphic designing. All right, I'll be wrapping up on the principle of graphic designing. Now, the principle of simplicity simply says that there's this thing that goes less is more. Less is more. Less is more. Less is more. Take that down. It will help you. Less is more. The more simple your design is, the more it communicates your message to your audience. The more simple your design is, the more it communicates to your audience. Now, we will not say that because we are using a square shape, and then every part of this square must an element must be represented on every part. In other words, you should have elements all through here. So one thing you can use to identify a newbie, a newbie graphic designer or a beginner in graphic design, it's the way their design are always very, very compacted. It's the way their design are always very, very, very choky. All right, their design usually don't have negative spacing. Their design usually are too busy. I mean, way too busy. They are way too busy. They they think that by occupying the whole space in your design makes your work more. No. All right. So making use of negative spacing in your design makes your work more professional. And negative spacing can also be termed as white spacing. What does that mean? Those are the empty spaces you see around your design. Now take a look at this design. Over here, all these empty spaces are what is called negative spacing or white spacing. All these empty spaces we see are what we call negative spacing. And these are what separates the professionals from the beginners. Taking a look at this, as simple as this design is, it communicates its message perfectly. Your design does not have to, your element does not need to be spread everywhere on your design for it to communicate your message. The use of negative spacing in your design makes your work look very, very, very professional. It makes your work look very, very, very professional. All right. So before we call it a day, although there were other things I wanted to treat today, I wanted to talk about I said I was going to explain how we can get color codes. Probably that would be for another session. All right. So I'm glad we've dealt with the principles of graphic designing. Probably in our next session, we would be moving on to the next thing. So just a recap of what I've said. I want to see if you understood all I've explained. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to display some designs, and I want you to point out the principle that you discovered that was used in the design. The principle you discovered that was used in the design. Now let's take a look at this. Yeah, Paul, tell me, what and what principle can you detect from this design, or
Okay, the
itemize how many principles were observed in design? I can hear you, go on.
okay, the first principle here is the balance principle.
Okay,
Then we have the hierarchy,
okay,
we have the contrast, and
okay,
the alignment principle, and repetition.
okay, okay.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm glad you are following. I'm glad you are following exactly what we had here. Then you can see how well this design is readable. It's very clear and very visible. And that is hinged on the principle of contrast. You can see how well arranged the elements are. And that is hinged on the principle of what? Alignment. You can see the hierarchy being displayed, mistake and lesson. That is the most important message the designer wants to communicate to you. And I'm sure that's the first thing you saw, because this is the most visible element here. Now you can see the principle of repetition being displayed here, where colors were repeated, also fonts were repeated. You can also see the principle of balance being displayed here. All right. So the bulk of the text were geared towards the right, and then this image was now balanced with the picture tilting towards the left. All right. So I'm glad you could detect that. So let's see one more. Okay, let's take a look at this. What and what principle can you see that was observed here?
Okay, the first one is contrast. The contrast
Okay,
principle, that's the surgery tag. Yeah. Then we have the balance principle.
okay,
We also have the alignment,
okay,
and the repetition of fonts and the white tags.
okay. Anything
Yeah.
else?
Okay. Mm, no, no, no.
Okay, okay. That's good, and that is encouraging. So it simply means you followed through closely and carefully. You paid rapt attention to the teaching, and that is highly commendable. All right. So part of my agenda for tonight's class was to talk about the types of, or the forms of graphic design. Yes, the forms of graphic design. All right. So graphic design, we have different aspects, different classes, different categories of graphic design. Graphic design, in its sense, is a broad term. It's a broad term. All right. So you cannot really call yourself a graphic designer except you have vast knowledge in all the forms or all the categories or all the classes of graphic design. Right. So I don't know if my time and my battery would permit me to talk on this. All right. So my battery is 1%. We will have to end this session now, and then the recording would be shared. Alright, so before my phone goes off, drop your lessons here. Subsequently, we'll be having other teachings here, and also the tutorials I'll be sending. So thanks for joining once again tonight. I'm really glad. I'm really glad.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.